Ward 8 voters, and welcome to our replay of the Ward 8 Candidate Forum for U.S. Senate and U.S. Representative. I'm Troy Dante Presswood, President of the Ward 8 Democrats. Be sure to click like and click share across all social platforms so all of our Ward 8 family and friends can get a kind reminder that it's election season here in D.C., here in Ward 8, and it's time to vote. The Ward 8 Democrats have organized this forum to provide you with valuable insights from the candidates vying for our support. Now, before we delve into the replay, I want to offer you a quick reminder that voting is now underway and you have several convenient options to cast your ballot. First, you can return your mail-in ballot at any of the designated drop box locations located throughout the city. A list of the locations here in Ward 8 are now on your screen. Feel free to take a screenshot of them right now so you'll have it for later. If you prefer, you can also drop off your completed ballot in the mail or at a post office. You can use a Dropbox location. They close at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, June 4th. If you're using the mail, it must be postmarked by primary election day to count. For those who wish to vote in person before Election Day, early vote centers are available for your convenience. Here we have listed the locations here in Ward 8. You can also take your completed mail-in ballot to a vote center if you must. And if you need to register or update your voter registration, you can do that at any vote center in Ward 8 or anywhere in the district. And lastly, the final day to vote is Election Day, Tuesday, June 4th. These vote centers will be open here in the ward. Feel free to screenshot them right now so you'll have it at your ready. Tuesday, June 4th is the final day to cast your ballot in person, so be sure to get your vote in on this date and bring 4 or 5 friends and plus some family members with you, as they should cast their vote as well. Now, although I've shown you the locations here in Ward 8, you can vote anywhere in the district. Now, you can visit ward8dems.com/ward8votes for all the latest information to help you vote successfully in the June 4th primary. From where you can vote to sample ballots and videos of all of our forums, we got you covered at that website. Remember, your vote is your voice, and it shapes the future of our community. Don't delay, make your choice, and participate in the political process. Now, let's delve into this forum and hear directly from candidates vying for our support. Pay close attention, as their words will guide you in making an informed decision at the polls. Enjoy.
We're going to proceed with the forum, engaging in 3 more awesome three more awesome conversations.
2 more.
Okay, I'm my fault. See, I knew it. 2 more awesome conversations. And those who are becoming the next shadow U.S. Senator and shadow representative for the District of Columbia. And so it's going to be pretty similar. We're going to listen in, hear what they have to say, get their insight of how they're going to, impact Ward 8, the great Ward 8. Their policy proposals, their visions, and their goals to assist us as citizens and community members and leaders. So our conversation will last about a good 45 minutes, and it's going to be also debate style. And then initially, I'll throw in a couple follow-up questions here and there, and it'll just be a good dialogue and conversation that we're going to have today. And for those who want to ask questions, you can use the Q&A feature, or those who are online, you can type it in. And you can use hashtag Ward8Votes. So as far as this round, each candidate will have 1 minute, 60 seconds for just 1 minute for an opening statement. And we're going to start with 1 minute responses to questions and move to 30 seconds as we near the end of our session. We may also move to rapid fire questions with short responses for very short questions. So any little, rebuttals, we'll try to incorporate that, but we're going to keep it in order fashion, do things in decency and in order. So if there are any rebuttals, you'll be given 30 seconds to respond. And yeah, so any questions, comments, concerns thus far? So the Shadow U.S. Senator and the Shadow U.S. Representative for the District of Columbia is a non-voting symbolic representative elected by the residents of the Washington, D.C., us. While they are not officially seated in the U.S. Senate or the House of Representatives, their primary role is to advocate for D.C. statehood and for congressional representation. The shadow senator and representative serve as a vocal proponents for granting D.C. statehood, which will provide the district's 700,000 plus population full voting rights and representation in both the House of Representatives and the Senate on par with existing states. It's an open seat in the shadow U.S. Senate race, as current shadow U.S. Senator Michael Brown is not running for re-election after 3 terms. In the shadow U.S. representative race today, we have Uwoliwa. Did I say that right?
Oh, yeah. Wolewa.
Uwoliwa. Okay, running for re-election a second term. Linda Gray is the challenger. And we're going to meet our candidates, and we're going to open up our ears and hear what they have to say. So let's meet the candidates for Shadow U.S. Senate and Shadow Representative. We're going to start with your opening statement. And yeah, for your opening statement, you will have 1 minute for opening statement. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to start with Miss Gray. You can start your opening statement, or will we?
Okay. Good afternoon, Ward 8, and thank you for having me. My name is Linda Gray, and I am a candidate for U.S. Representative. I am a 5th generation Washingtonian. I currently serve as the vice chair of the D.C. Democratic Party. I'm an at-large member. I live in Ward 4 in Tacoma. I am a former biology teacher. 1 year I taught at Ballou, a former assistant principal, and a retired principal from DC Public Schools. And I am a serious supporter of DC statehood. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Miss Gray. We're gonna have now Mr. Uwoliwa. I'm sorry if I keep messing that up.
No, you got it, Khalid. You got it, Khalid. Good afternoon, Ward 8 family. My name is Dr. Oye Owolewa. I'm an elected healthcare worker. I'm the U.S. representative of Washington, D.C. And just as important, I'm a Ward 8 resident. I've been in this role for about a few years now, leading the charge for D.C. statehood, bringing the improbability of my being a Nigerian American to increase the awareness of D.C. statehood all across this country. We've been numerous publications. We've had the Supercar Rally for DC statehood, get people interested in statehood. And we have served on a panel of CBC Week to talk about DC statehood. In addition to talking about statehood, we're also plugging the holes of what statehood doesn't provide for us, whether it's our criminal justice system, whether it's our educational system, whether it's our local autonomy. We did just that. We've launched a bunch of clinics to get our returning citizens back to work and removing their barriers to re-entry. We're helping young people find future careers that can keep them in DC. And last but not least, we're helping minority business owners learn how to get contracts, grants, and certifications to build up in our nation's capital. Again, I'm thankful to be here. I'm asking for your vote for grant us 2 more years. I'm excited to chat with you, colleague, and be here with the Ward 8 Dems.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we're going to have our opening statement from Mr. Kinlow.
Well, good afternoon, Ward 8. Hi, I'm Eugene Kinlow. I am here in the Bellevue section of Ward 8, where I've lived since I was a young kid. I've attended Ballou High School and graduated with my brothers and sisters. I am a former chair of the Ward 8 Democrats, a former Ward 8 committee man, and a former delegate for Mr. Obama, the Democratic Convention in 2008. So Democrats matter. I'm running for the position because I'm passionate about DC voting rights, statehood, and human rights right here in Washington, DC. Because here in the city that some people call the most powerful city in the world, we are treated as second-class citizens. And I think that is wrong. I'm running because I have been doing the work of the senator. There's no one else who's running for this position has done the work that I am doing now and have done. I've been at every stage of our development and our advocacy for DC voting rights and statehood for the last 20 years. Every significant protest I've helped organize. I was there in 2004 when the Democrats were at the convention in Boston and organized the Tea Party. I was there in 2008 when we were in Denver and organized an event from the Mint, because we talk about taxation without representation. So I was there. I was there in 2011 when Mayor Gray, Mayor Bowser,
Mr.
and many
Kinlow,
of you-
Mr. Kinlow, you're at
Yes.
time, my dear. You're at
Beg your
time.
pardon?
You're at
Yeah.
time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bo
Can you,
Kinlow.
can you all see me? Can you see this? Like when I hold up signs, you guys can see me?
I got you behind the banner, so let me move this banner so I can see you. Thank you, LaJoy.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. All right, so last but not least, Mr. Jane.
Hi, all. First of all, I want to thank the Ward 8 Democrats and Khalik and Ms. Johnson and Mr. Presswood for hosting this forum. It's so important for people across the city, and can you hear me?
I can't talk to
Okay.
you.
Sorry. Okay. So I'm so excited for people across the city and especially in Ward 8 to understand what the positions can do and learn more about who we are as candidates. So my name is Ankit Jain. I'm a Ward 2 resident in the Mount Vernon Triangle area, and I'm a voting rights attorney with Fair Vote. Before that, I worked for 4 years as an attorney with the Sierra Club doing environmental law. I am running for this position to be an effective, a collaborative, and an independent voice for DC as your next shadow senator. Statehood is a passion of mine. It's an issue I've been working on for many years now, and I have the vision for what this position can do, and I bring a fresh perspective on how to get what we need in DC out of Congress. And I have the legislative advocacy experience we need from our chief advocate before the US Senate through my work with Fair Vote and with the Sierra Club. And just a little bit personally about me, I'm a lifelong DC sports fan, especially a Wizards fan ever since the Jordan years, when I was lucky enough to help introduce Michael Jordan onto the court. Just got plucked from the stands randomly and got to high five Michael Jordan. And I am a biker. I don't own a car, and I'm a Metro super user and ready to fight for federal funding for Metro. Thanks so much, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we thank each and every one of you for your opening statements. Lovely. And we're going to jump right into the question. So our first question that we have is, what would be your top priorities and legislative agenda as a shadow senator or representative in advocating for DC statehood? We're going to start with Mr. Kinlow.
All
You
right,
have
so
1 minute to answer.
the top priority is DC statehood. Without it, we're relegated to being second-class citizens. So the first step is to make sure that we can get the House, the Senate, and the president to vote for it. We've passed the bill twice in the House over the last 2 cycles of Congress. In the Senate, we're at about 46 senators. We need to increase that. West Virginia was not supportive. Arizona was not supportive. We need to make sure that, one, as Democrats, that we get all Democrats on board. And that is the agenda. So this is an election year, so we need to urge everyone. We need to urge folk who come out in a part of the states to encourage their elected Democrats to support our legislation. I believe we can get statehood, but it's going to take a lot of hard work. But what first we have to do, what we need to do to convince all of us as Democrats to support DC statehood at the convention this year and beyond.
Thank you, Mr. Kinlow. Ms. Gray, I'm sorry.
Same question?
Yes,
Okay. What I plan to do, well, we're already on the ground running with this. We plan to really have a serious demonstration and illustration for DC statehood and the need for DC statehood at the Chicago Convention. For me, again, it is reclaiming the House. That is something that we have to do. We need 4 votes on the side of the Senate. We know Manchin is leaving. We're hoping that Representative Gallegos from Arizona can win, because that will be one of the seats we need. We need to work with Senator King in Maine, which is one of my states, as vice chair of the Eastern Regional Caucus. And we need 2 more votes on the Senate side. If we can gain back the House and keep our Senate majority, our Democratic majority on the Senate, it will get to the president, and he does fully support statehood.
That's right.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Jane.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with what both Eugene and Linda have said in terms of statehood being the #1 priority. I'll add 2 other priorities I'll have as shadow senator. One is stopping laws that the council passes and then the mayor signs from being overturned by Congress, and stopping Congress in general from interfering in our local affairs, which has just happened last year and happens all too frequently. And the third thing is getting federal funding for DC priorities like Metro, like housing, affordable housing, and other issues like that. So those are my priorities. In terms of the statehood fight, how are we going to make it happen, right? That's what people want to know. And what I have yet to see really from our movement is a clear forward-thinking strategy on how are we going to get the statehood bill passed. You know, we have only limited influence on what happens on a national level in terms of what the Congress looks like. But what we can do is, when we have the right Congress, do we in DC have the right strategy? Are we ready to push the statehood bill through? And that's what I think we've been missing a little bit from the statehood movement. So the number one thing I'll do is make sure we all get on the same page and have a clear forward-thinking strategy. Here is how we're going to pass the statehood bill. Here's what DC Vote's going to do. Here's what the shadow centers are going to do. Here's what every single person in the ecosystem of statehood will do to make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Jane. Mr. Uwaliwa?
Yes, thank you for that question. And one good thing about being in this forum with 3 other statehood activists is that we all get to agree on certain things that we've been doing for the past few years. I believe in terms of this role, we have to not only do things in the short term in terms of getting more senators to be on board with DC statehood, get more House of Representatives, Democratic representatives elected to support statehood. We also have to think about the long-term plan as well. The people who are running state legislative races right now are going to be tomorrow's Congress member candidates. We have to get them as well. That's why we went to West Virginia and introduced the DC statehood resolution. That's why we're going to Texas and doing the same thing, because we understand that young people being involved, future candidates being involved, is going to help us flip this conversation into something that's more viral. And instead of being a page 9 issue, will be a page 1 issue.
Thank you, sir. Any rebuttals or other remarks?
Yeah, I've got just a clear rebuttal. Now, I've heard.
Hold on, Mr. Kinlow. You're going to get 30 seconds and then,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Let me know.
go right ahead.
Okay, so I heard that there is no strategy, and I think it's clearly that there is a strategy and a path forward for DC statehood, and there has always been. But what we have lacked is just the investment, and that's what we need to work on. We need to make investment and a commitment out in the states. We all see McDonald's. We all know McDonald's. We know all the products McDonald's has, but they tell you each and every day what you should be buying from them. We need to be doing the same thing about statehood. People are not going to act on our issue unless we tell them, unless we show them and show them again. And then we keep showing them why we need to be first-class citizens, and being a second-class citizen doesn't matter.
And I'll add something as well, if it's okay, Khalid and Ms. Johnson.
You have 30 seconds.
I'll wait for you. Okay, great. I think what I have seen, and what many people who I've talked to have seen, is that the different parts of the statehood movement aren't really working together in the way that they could or should be. And that has created problems where we have the mayor saying one thing and DC Vote saying another thing and the council saying a third thing. And I think one of the reasons we see that is because we're not all on the same game plan. And that's what I want to make sure we do, that we have somebody be a unifier in this position, and making sure everyone is working together from the same playbook. And I haven't seen that yet. And that's what I want to bring to this position.
Okay. And Ms. LaJoy, I'm going to have to rebut that again.
Wait,
I have to.
Hold on, Mr. Hold on, wait. Sorry, that's the timer, y'all. Hold on, Mr. Kinlow. Khalid, did you want to give Oye or Ms. Gray another chance to add on before we do another rebuttal? I'm going to kick it to you.
If any other one of you have a rebuttal.
Well, the only thing that I would add on to that is that I'm not sure that we don't have a clear strategy. I think there are different pathways to get there. For me, my pathway has been through state parties, is to get 100% approval and an official vote from every state party in this country to support DC statehood. I mean, that opened up a pathway for us to, get to more congressional members. So I'm not sure that we don't have a strategy, that we're not on the same page. I think it's just different ways that we do things. And that just happens to be one of the ways that I've been successful. So I add that to the mix.
Can I do a rebuttal? One thing that I don't like, and I think Ward 8 doesn't appreciate, is solo credit for group action, right? We all were part of this together in terms of getting certain Democratic parties to support DC statehood. In addition, this shouldn't be a Democrat versus Republican issue. This should be about a matter of keeping us equal to our friends and neighbors in Maryland and Virginia. Beyond that, we need to make sure young people, regardless of what their political affiliation is, understands the importance of having DC representatives voting and DC residents having their voice heard on a national policy standpoint.
May I ask a question?
Hold on, Ms. Gray. Khalid.
Hold on. Okay, so we're gonna do one follow-up rebuttal for each question. So as far as like, we're gonna do one from each person, one rebuttal for each question. So we're gonna have to move on to the next question. Which is, what unique perspectives or experiences would you bring to the role of shadow senator or representative? We're gonna start with Ms. Gray.
Well, the perspectives that I bring will be the things that I will do. First of all, the one thing that I do know about this particular position is that the first thing, first and foremost, is that you have to support this issue, and you have to continue to teach and show people what it means really not to be a state. I have found that when we do that, people get it, they get it, and they understand it. The second thing you have to do, and I think to be on this job, which is a voluntary position, is to get on that hill, to talk to members of Congress, but also to be there, present in the moment when there's an oversight committee or an oversight hearing and they are attacking home rule. We need to be packing the room.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Jane, same question.
Yes. So I am a voting rights attorney, right? I work on voting rights issues every day. I work directly with a lot of the nationwide democracy groups that are essential for our push for DC statehood, whether you talk about Campaign Legal Center or the Brennan Center or ACLU, and the list goes on. And so I have experience in advancing voting issues on a national and a state level issue through my work. And one of the things that I have learned is that people often misunderestimate or underestimate the importance of these advocacy organizations in advancing our agenda. And so what often happens is that advocacy organizations will write a bill and you'll have a legislator be the champion and introduce the bill. And so I've seen that process in action. I've been a part of that process. And so I'm going to bring that experience to this position and my connections to these nationwide organizations, who are the ones who have members in the districts of the senators and representatives who we need to vote for us. We don't have the vote in Congress, so we need to be pushing people who do have the vote to push their representatives to advocate for us. And so that's what I'll bring to this position.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Oye.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Unique perspectives to bring to this office. One thing about being an incumbent is I can't just tell you what I want to do. I can tell you what I've been doing. Here in Ward 8, we lead through service. We're not a lecture community. We're not going to do things based off of what is important to us. It's how you relate to the next person. Now, I could have just said, hey, we did expansion programs just because it's a great thing to do, but it also ties into statehood. Because DC is not a state, we're restricted in how much we're able to expunge records. So rather than just yell at people about why voting is important, we get to tell people about how it impacts their lives. Now, there's a conversation about me being on the Hill. I have relationships on the Hill. The reason why I was able to be on the Congressional Black Caucus panel is because Stephen Horsford knows who I am, respects what I do. Because Representative Plasker knows who I am, respects what I do. Because Don Beyer knows who I am, respects what I do. It's not based on how well I can speak on a stage. It's based off the impact we have in our communities and what we can bring to the legislative process.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kinlow.
Right, and the perspective I bring is I think it's kind of a full universe. It's one of being an activist, an advocate, a person who's worked up on Capitol Hill, a person who managed the mayor's office of federal and regional affairs and maintained relationships with many elected officials throughout the country. It's about a person who's worked with many national organizations, including Fair Vote, NAACP, Leadership Conference, League of Women Voters, many national organizations that have been carrying water for our issue. So a person who's able to work through organizations, work with the elected officials to build a perspective, and a person who's worked on public awareness campaigns out in states. I work with the party, the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., and the Democratic Party in West Virginia to counter some of the things that Senator Manchin has said and build support in the state. So that's the perspective I build, kind of a worldly, a broader perspective that involves the people, the players, and the places. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinlow. Okay. So any other comments? Actually, I do have a follow-up question for Mr. Oy. You have 30 seconds to respond to a follow-up question. You mentioned that we can tell people why voting is important rather than shoving it down their throat and yelling at them. My question to you is, why do you feel that people don't more so choose to vote nowadays?
Well, when I've talked to people about voting, some of those who are reluctant to vote don't understand that how important it is. They're used to things not going their way. They're used to being told or talking to their elected official every 4 years, every 2 years when it's time for election time. Being a former ANC commissioner, I understand it's important to lead through your service and let it talk for you. The reason why I'm able to go into almost any neighborhood, regardless of what my background is, what my name is because I've been putting in the work. We've been going to classroom getting kids interested in science careers. We've been going to neighborhoods talking to them about what they care about. And that has really transferred forward. And that's how someone with a different name can keep winning these elections.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any add-ons? If not, we can move on to the next question. So beyond statehood, Mr. Jain, what other issues would you focus on as a voice for DC residents?
Yeah, I mean, so number one is working with our council and with Congress to make sure that the Congress is not interfering in our local affairs. Just a little over a year ago, we had Congress overturn a bill passed by the council for the first time in, I believe, 20 or 30 years. And so I will be number one thing I promise to anybody watching this is that I will advocate to protect any DC law from being overturned by Congress, no matter what my personal opinion is on the issue, no matter what the mayor's opinion is or any member of the DC Council's opinion is. So that's one of the main things that I'll be making sure I'm doing is working with the council and Congress to kind of be a liaison to understand what can we do to stop the Congress from getting involved in the first place. And if they choose to get involved, how can we make sure that they're not successful in overturning our local efforts? I'll say a second thing is making sure that Congress is working positively with DC and not negatively. Congress has for years prohibited DC from using our own local tax dollars to subsidize abortions for low-income women. They prohibited us from legalizing the sale of marijuana. Those are things I would work to get rid of. And I would work to get federal funding for things like Metro, which is facing a huge fiscal crisis and could really use some federal funds to keep our service levels that our city needs. You're on mute, Khalid.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Jain. Mr. Kinlow, same question.
Okay, well, I think that it's a full-time job to defend democracy in Washington, D.C. And you're really going to spend a lot of time there because you've got a number of members of Congress who will always say something stupid about Washington, D.C. that will attack us on whether we have too many cameras and that maybe we shouldn't have those cameras, or our ability to tax cannabis, or a woman's right to choose. Right now, in this particular cycle of political theater, you've got candidates for president on the other side, I'm not going to mention his name, saying that he'd like to minimize Washington, D.C. and remove the Home Rule Act and put it under a local control. Well, that will be a full-time job. This has been almost a do-nothing Congress, and many Republican members of Congress have one of their top talking points has always been Washington, D.C., that they're not doing a great job. I think that we need to be on offense as well. You attack me in Washington, D.C., I'm going to attack you back in your state. I'm going to attack you back in your city. You talk about my crime, I'm going to talk about your crime. And I'll be very specific with it as well. So we need to be on offense.
Yes, sir.
Full-time job.
Yes, sir. Ms. Gray, same question.
So the thing that I would do, one thing, let me just say this. I have to agree with Mr. Kinlow. This is a full-time job. It's a volunteer position, but it is a full-time job. And whenever there is a need to be on the Hill and to be in those oversight hearings, I will be there and try to pack that room with as many Democrats so that the GOP actually has to look us in our faces as they did on March 7th, 2 days after the council signed off on Secure DC. We had a representative from Congress to introduce a crime bill for DC and look me in the face and say, If
Mhm.
DC can't control their crime, we will. We should have had that run back, and I don't ever want to see something like that happen again with us not being there in full force to face them with what they do when they try to attack us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Oy.
Yes, I would like to add that to that. I agree with everything that was said before, but it's not just about how much time you have, it's about how you use it. As Eugene earlier said, we've gone to West Virginia not only to write in a local publication about Senator Manchin, but also go on a radio station that he favors to talk about him. Because I'm not just talking to a conservative radio host, I'm talking to their listeners, talking to their voters. As long as we don't have awareness in all 50 states about DC statehood, then those Congress members can hide behind DC statehood. Even those that support DC statehood on paper may not have all the courage once it gets closer and closer and closer. So it's not just about today, it's also about the DC of tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttals or other comments? If not, we can move on to the next question. Next question would be, how would you build coalitions and garner support from members of Congress to advance the cause of DC statehood and autonomy, especially across the aisles with Republicans? We can start with Ms. Gray.
Thank you for the question. One of the things that happened with the GOP primary here in the district, it was the first primary that emphatically denounced Trump, which to me was opportunity, because that means that there are some like-minded Republicans who are probably for statehood who could work with Democrats. And it reminded me of a city council that we once had with Republicans, Dr. Jerry Moore, Carol Schwartz, Hilda Mason, who worked feverishly on behalf of our city. And so I think that there is possibility, and it certainly is worth trying.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr.
Sorry, was that me?
Yes.
I didn't quite catch it. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important question. The number one thing is I think we have to be a little bit strategic about it, right? I don't think Ted Cruz is going to be supporting DC statehood, but I think that you could get Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska to support it if you make the right arguments. And she's somebody who's more moderate and who herself lived through a time period when the place she lived in was not a state, was a territory. And so really be strategic about who you're reaching out to. I'm going to work to get Republican support, and I'll, of course, work to get Democratic support and really work with the moderate Democrats, especially talking about people like Mark Kelly in Arizona, like Angus King in Maine, and focusing on the people who are the deciding votes, who are gettable but aren't gotten yet. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leverage my pre-existing relationships with members of Congress and staff members on the Hill. And I'll also make sure I work very closely with the Virginia and Maryland delegations to make sure that they can work with us to advance statehood forward, because they have a vote and they have a lot of a stake in what happens in DC, because so much of what happens in DC affects them too.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Kinlow.
All right, so coalition building is very important. When I worked at DC Vote as their director of public affairs, we went from about 20 organizations to over 100, using local organizations first to spiral and leverage to get to national organizations. And that's been very successful. We still have to do that. We got to continue to build to make sure that we've got a presence out in the state, in every state. So it's got to be a 50-state strategy based on the people in the organizations, you know, the League of Women Voters, the human rights organizations, the civil rights organizations, the unions, all of those have favor in Washington, D.C. on our policies, and we need their support. So we have to continue to do that. But we also have to cross enemy lines, right, when we go out to the states. That means talking to people we don't normally talk to. So over the last number of years, I've gone to, last 20 years, almost every Democratic convention to talk about DC voting rights and DC statehood. But I've also gone to the Republican conventions. I've gone with our shadow delegation. I hate saying shadow, but our statehood delegation. I've gone with our delegation, and I've also gone out with our mayor. So we need to do all of those things, but we need to cross enemy lines and be there in the states.
Thank you, Mr. Kinlow. Any other?
Yes, I don't think I've given my minutes.
My apologies. I'm sorry.
No problem, colleague. I know it's four people, so it's a little bit more than two from last time. Yes, coalition building is important, but the key to coalition building is not the who and the what, it's the why. It's telling people why DC statehood impacts them. I would not have been able to go to California and talk to folks if I didn't explain to them how more DC votes could increase water purity and infrastructure in their home state. We've done a lot of coalition building, not just with organizations, not just with members of Congress, but also with endorsing organizations. Common Defense, a veterans-led PAC, now asks people running for office if you support DC statehood. They're a nationwide organization. They would not have done so without us pushing for it. Another thing about reaching across the aisle, I've done so. Senator Roger Marshall's office, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, they will only support DC statehood once we find a partnering state to go with us, whether it's Republican, Democrat, whether it's slave or a free state. They're not just going to be the first Republican to jump on board with DC statehood. They're going to get trounced. So we have to do our job to make sure we get DC statehood as a priority, and then the Republicans will play ball and find their alternative solution to add their second state to it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oy. I do have a follow-up question for Mr. Kinlow. So considering the historical resistance from some members of Congress towards DC being a state, concerns about the city's unique status, how do you plan to navigate deeply integrated, ingrained ideology and effective sway opinions in favor of DC's autonomy?
Well, I think there's a variety of fact patterns that can be used. One, I think that if you looked at polling over the last 10 years, arguments that have been very persuasive for most Americans have been on the tax issue. Taxation without representation is what? Is tyranny. That has responded. That makes people respond. So we've got to use that a little bit more. You got to use our veterans. We have veterans, people who fight and die in wars, yet they have no vote in Congress. The tax issue is very persuasive, and the veterans issue, we got to put them together with our student issues. And there's just so many more issues that we can use, and those are two that I would start with.
And is it okay if I just add something, 30 seconds?
Yes, I was going to ask you the same question.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is when you talk to people who don't live in DC and you explain to them what it means to lack statehood, they get it immediately. Unless you're talking to a very partisan Republican, every single person I have talked to is like, what the heck? You guys don't have the right to vote and you're taxed. And so what the problem is people just don't understand. So we need to get this issue in front of people. And I think when we get the issue in front of enough people, that is what is going to break the logjam, that they need to understand this is what it really means to be a resident of Washington, D.C. We are tax-paying American citizens who want the same rights that you have, and we just don't have them. And so I think that's where it comes down to.
And if I can it's not quite a rebuttal, but just to add a little flavor to that conversation.
Okay.
Because it may help folk at home as well who don't understand that we in Washington, D.C. pay more taxes than 24 states. We in Washington, D.C. pay number 1 per capita in taxes. Most Americans are concerned about taxes. And so we've got a way to get into to talk to them. If we were a state, we get $3.2 billion more in Washington, D.C. That $3.2 million will go to our kids, it'll go to our schools, it'll go to our seniors, it'll go to our infrastructure. So we need to be fighting. We need to be fighting. And I think we can share that message with them and they'll understand.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gray, you have something to add?
Yes, I'd like to add to it. I think that people do get it. But one of the things that it can be a very simple conversation. Once you tell people, Congress doesn't take care of us. We take care of ourselves, yet they have the ability to tell us what we can do with our own tax dollars. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to anybody when we say that to them, and they get it and they support statehood. I find that more and more people do understand and they do support statehood. It's just an unwillingness to Congress, because we all know if DC gets statehood, have more done.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. All right. So we're gonna move on with that question. Some people, including Republicans, have suggested the best way for us to receive full citizenship is through the state of Maryland. What is your stance on retroceding the district back to Maryland as an alternative to statehood? Mr. Jane.
Yeah, I strongly oppose retrocession, and in fact, I have testified before the Maryland General Assembly to that effect. A few weeks ago, there was a hearing on a resolution that a representative Maryland had introduced, saying that Maryland does not support retrocession and that there's no legal basis to deny DC statehood because of any claims Maryland might have on that land. And I testified in support of that resolution. I'm hopeful we can pass that resolution. The people of DC have been separate from Maryland for over, I believe now, over 200 years. Sorry, don't quote me on that, but it's been a long time, and longer than West Virginia has been separate from Virginia, longer than a lot of states have existed. We have our own culture here in DC. They have their own culture in Maryland. We don't want to be a part of them. They don't want us to be. They don't want us. There's no reason to force this unwilling marriage upon both parties. The only solution to our disenfranchisement in DC is statehood, and I will be 100% committed to statehood, and I will oppose retrocession.
Okay. Mr. Oy.
Yes, thank you for that question. I wholeheartedly agree. I've knocked on doors in Southeast DC. I've knocked on doors in PG County. PG County doesn't want to be in DC, and DC doesn't want to be part of Maryland. Not only would it not work economically, not only would it not work culturally, it won't even work politically. The governor, the former Republican governor of Maryland, did not want DC voters to vote in his election. We are the smartest people in this country. We can vote our own mayor, we can vote our own council, make our own decisions for ourselves. We do not need Congress to oppress us and interfere with our legal, our legislative process. We don't even have them do that in their own separate jurisdictions. We're safer than some of the Republican districts in Congress, whether it's Bakersfield, where our former Speaker of House resides in. And we have the tools, we have the people, we have the intelligence to make the best decisions for ourselves. We need statehood to be able to have full autonomy, to have full control of our resources, and have a say on national matters.
Thank you, Mr. Oy. Mr. Kenlow.
All right, so this conversation really is kind of a false flag. And folk want you to think about this as a real option, but it's not. The things that you hear people talk about is, well, maybe a constitutional amendment, one. That's not going to happen. And two, they want to talk about retrocession, and that's not going to happen. For retrocession to happen, really two elements need to occur. One, residents of the District of Columbia would have to say that they want to be a part of Maryland. In 2016, as a part of the election and as a part of the convention, residents of Washington, D.C. said they wanted statehood, which is not being a part of Maryland. And the citizens of Maryland, the number two, citizens of Maryland would have to say that they want us to come back. And that's not going to happen. We've worked very hard with Maryland. We've got folk on like Stidinghorn. We were down there. We're moving legislation and testimony in Maryland, and that's not ever going to happen. So when you hear these issues, people out in the world, retrocession and a constitutional amendment ain't going to happen, and talk about DC statehood. That's what we need to talk about.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gray.
Okay. Retrocession is a moot point. We don't want Maryland. Maryland doesn't want us. As a matter of fact, Maryland supports statehood for the District of Columbia. It's a moot point.
Okay. Follow-up question. Hypothetically speaking, this is just general for anyone. Hypothetically speaking, pursuing retrocession to Maryland emerged as the only feasible path towards achieving full citizenship rights for the district residents. Would you be open to reconsidering? And if so, what criteria or conditions would need to be met for you to support this course of action? I want to start with Mr. Jane.
Yeah, I just don't think that's the premise of the question. I just don't agree with, to be honest. I don't think there's ever a situation where retrocession will be the only feasible option, because there's always the option, if we don't have it this Congress, to come back next Congress. And if we do retrocession, that is permanent. We are permanently choosing something. It's not like a half step. I support some half steps. We're talking about getting maybe a vote for a real vote for our representative. We're talking about getting some more control over our criminal justice system. I support that because that's a half step on the path to statehood. Retrocession is a totally different path. And I don't support that because it's just not going to happen, and it's just not a real option.
Okay, thank you. We have one more rebuttal from Mr. Kinlow. Actually, I'm sorry. If Miss Gray have something to say. If
I totally agree. It's a moot point.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right. Okay, and so here is our next question. We asked the at-large candidates this question earlier. So we're gonna ask you the same question. How do you feel about Initiative 83? Mr. Kinlow, you can answer that.
All right. So one, I think if you can get the votes, you can put it on the ballot. So I'm supportive of anything that people want to put before the people. But I don't think that 83 is right for us here in Washington, D.C. As a member of the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C. National, I know that our Ward 8 organization, which I'm a part of, has voted against it. I know that the Democrats in Washington, D.C. have voted against it. And I am not supportive of people joining a Democratic primary and weighing in that are not Democrats.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking about the CRB, Initiative 83. So I think that this is something that's not good for us here in Washington, D.C. I'm not persuaded that the experiments that have occurred in Alaska and New York are right for us here in Washington, D.C. And I don't want to be an experiment. So I oppose it.
Okay. Thank you. My apologies. I meant to say it was 30 seconds, but
Okay.
okay, I'm gonna ask
Oh,
Mr. James.
I'm sorry, Kalik. I thought that was a whole question. Because I gave Mr. Kinlow a minute, can we give everybody else a minute to be fair? Is that okay? Okay.
Mr. Jane.
Yeah, I am a strong supporter of Initiative 83 for a couple of reasons. One, you look at the ranked choice voting aspect. Ranked choice voting benefits communities of color. It benefits communities just like here in Ward 8, because it makes sure that the person who's actually supported by a majority of the population is elected. You look in Ward 7, you have 10 candidates running. Somebody's going to win with 20% of the vote, and we don't know who actually the majority of people supported. Ranked choice voting would avoid that. Studies have shown that communities of color, that voters of color are more likely to rank more candidates than white voters, and so ranked choice voting benefits communities of color. I trust the voters of Ward 8. I think they're smart enough to know how to rank candidates, and I know that they will use ranked choice voting effectively. On the open primaries aspect, let's all be honest. We don't take anything for granted, but the Democratic primary in DC is the main event, right? And what we're doing is we're disenfranchising tens of thousands of people. I think 1/5 of all voters in DC from the main election in DC. I was at a League of Women Voters new citizen naturalization ceremony. A lot of them don't understand how this works in DC with the Democratic Party being the main election. They didn't choose a party to register. I wanted to yell at them, you're disenfranchising yourself by not registering as a Democrat. Of course I couldn't. I was a nonpartisan employee. Those people deserve the right to vote in the only election that matters, and that's why I support Initiative 83.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gray.
I do not support Initiative 83. First of all, if you want to vote in the Democratic primary, it's simple, just become a Democrat. And in terms of ranked choice voting, our research, and I'm an officer of the DC Democratic Party, our research shows that it does disenfranchise voters of color, particularly in wards 5, 7, and 8. We voted against it. I do not go against the party. That's the party's stance, and I support it wholeheartedly, 100%.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Mr. Oy.
The idea of I-83 is to make sure that the candidate gets the majority of the votes. However, I do have concerns about the implementation of it. It's very hard to go from voting traditionally to ranked choice voting without any type of lead up to it. I believe that a ranked choice vote would probably be more, I think I will be more willing to support that on the ANC level, given that there's oftentimes 2, 3, 4 candidates, especially in those elections. And it will give people, especially in Ward 8, when I was my first race, I was with 3. I was in a seat, a race of 3 people, the opportunity to learn the process. I think when we saw what happened in New York, we saw that someone wasn't even elected mayor for a few days. And I believe that with ranked choice voting, there's an opportunity to really educate all DC residents about what this process is. In terms of open primaries, I believe that the Board of Elections tried to make it very easy for you to register. And they tell you if you're one party or the other. Now with mail-in ballots, if you don't get a ballot, you can really see what your registration is. And I believe that before we were to implement something, we definitely need to have a high level of education for voters, civic engagement.
All right, I just want to rebut something I heard, Khalik.
30. Okay.
All right, and that is, if this is about enfranchising people who like to use the franchise of voting, well, there's some things that we can do. One, we spend a little bit more money on GOTV, and that means get out the vote, right? Two, if you really want to enfranchise to get more people to vote, why don't we make Election Day a holiday where people can come out and vote, and it is a day off. You don't have to compete with work, school, or anything else. Those actions right there will enfranchise a majority of folk because it makes voting easier. And your goal is to remove barriers. That will remove barriers.
Can I just add something as well, Khalik?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Eugene just said. I mean, we can do all of that, and we can support in ending disenfranchisement for independent voters in our primaries. We talk about independent. When we talk about independent voting, I think it's important to point out DC is a huge outlier in the rest of the nation. Almost every other state in the country allows independents to vote in party primaries. We are one of maybe three jurisdictions that don't allow it. So the sky will not fall if this happens. It happens in every other state. They have strong Democratic parties. I am a proud member of the DC Democrats, and I believe that this will only strengthen the DC Democratic Party and not harm it. We should just, follow the lead of every other state in this country and allow independents to vote in party primaries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. J.
Are we only allowed one rebuttal? Is that the rule?
We have to.
This is a Democrat organization. We're talking about independence. I just have to say that I stand with Democrats on this.
Yes, sir. All right, so we're gonna have to move forward to our next question. You'll be given 30 seconds each for this question. And we're gonna start with Mr. Oye. How would you work to involve and engage DC residents, particularly youth here in Ward 8, such as myself, in the statehood movement? 30 seconds.
Absolutely. We have to invest resources. I'm proud to have been involved in the DC Statehood Essay program that Phil Pinnell and ACC has championed for the past few years. Getting young people those early experiences of being civically engaged really helps them in the long term, whether they want to run for office, whether they want to go on campuses spreading the fight for DC statehood outside the district, and really helping us get closer to statehood. In addition, we launched a monumental vote center at Howard University, making sure that young people can actually vote on campus. Never been done before in DC on college campuses. We're trying to spread that all throughout the city. We want to make sure that folks understand that they can vote and start those actions early.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oye. Ms. Gray.
Well, thank you for the question. And I'm happy to announce that as the DC Democratic Party has the same feeling about engaging young folks, we are already in process of going into high schools to educate them about the educational process and helping them to get registered to vote. We also have college Democrats as members of the party who also help us to get out the vote. But it is important, and these young people who are coming on board are learning more and more about statehood themselves, and they are our young voices in this whole process.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gray. Mr. Kinlow.
All right, so young people are and have been a part of every movement. We see the activism now in our newspapers and on TV every day. You see how many young people are active on issues that move them. We saw it 30 years ago in South Africa, and we need to get them more engaged now. I've been a part of a team that helps support grants for young folk, including the Anacostia Coordinating Council. I've been out there supporting organizations like Students for DC Statehood to build momentum and build awareness out in the states. And I think that we still have a lot of work to do to get all of our students who are here in Washington, D.C., so when they go out into the country, they can share their message.
Yes,
but
sir.
We can do more.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And Mr. James.
Yeah, I mean, I have two thoughts on this. One is that I see a lot of the same people at statehood rallies and events I go to, which I do go to all the time. A lot of times you see the same people. And so we need to expand the group of people who are going to these events. And one of the ways to do that is through things like educational campaigns of our young people, especially in Ward 8. going to schools, talking to the seniors in the classes. And I really want to commend Rep. Oye because he's been doing a lot of this work, and I want to keep, work with him to continue doing that. And the second thing I'll say is that, a lot of people don't get involved because they don't understand why statehood matters. What does it mean to me for DC to be a state or not be a state? And so we need to explain to them why it matters that crime is higher in DC because we're not a state, because we have a messed up criminal justice system, and connect it directly to their experiences.
Yes, thank you. And here is a quick follow-up question. Recognizing the role of our young people in DC, how do you envision that by empowering young people here, not only as participants, but as leaders within their statehood movement? And what concrete steps will you take to ensure that their voices are not only heard, but they are a part of the movement that you are trying to set apart? I want to ask that to Mr. Jain.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we need to do is we have something called the statehood table, where we have people meet who are part of different statehood organizations to talk about how to move the cause forward. And we need to make sure we have more people in that attending those meetings who are part of the organizational, grassroots leader efforts to advance statehood. And if we can get more young people in Ward 8 directly involved with statehood and being part of those conversations, not just showing up at events, but really guiding and leading the path forward for us. That's what I would like to do, and make sure we have that organizational apparatus in place.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to have the closing statements from each of you. You all have 1 minute to do so. And yeah, so we can start with Mr. Oye.
First of all, Khalik, I want to say thank you for not only leading this panel, moderating here, but also moderating the earlier debate. I want to thank you all here at Ward 8 Dems. I see my friends, LaJoy, Troy, Phil, and members on this panel who have really taken it to the next step. Being in Southeast Washington, D.C., is not just about how you spend your time or how much time you have. It's really about how you impact other people, how you platform other people, how you take this seat from the shadows to the next step. And I'm very proud to do so. Whether it's our DC statehood rallies, whether it's going to Congress, whether it's bringing Congress to some of our events, it's really been something that has been tantamount to what we've done in this role. I ask for your vote. I ask you to share what we've been doing in this office with your friends, because the more people that know about this role, the more successful we'll be, the more we'll be able to make DC statehood a reality. And I thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I thank you so much for allowing the spotlight to be here. And more importantly, for using Ward 8 values to take this level to the next. It's not about what the mayor can do, what the council member can do. It's how each and every one of us can make this city safer and more fair.
Thank you. Ms. Gray?
All right, thank you. I am asking for your vote because I'm already on the job and can document my work. Please go to lindagraydc.com. We need to have a representative that has the available time to go on the Hill as defined in our New Columbia Commission, who has talked to Congress folks, who have talked to the President of the United States, who involves Democratic parties across the country to support DC statehood. And finally, I want to remind everybody that what happens with us, particularly with women, the assault that women suffer through all across this country, we need more women in office all across this country. There has not been a woman in this position since 1993. And so we need someone who is available, who will work to try to flip Congress, to try to stabilize and maintain Democratic control in the Senate, and get one more shot at statehood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jain?
I also want to just thank you, Khalik, for being an excellent moderator, and Ms. Johnson and Mr. Presswood for being great timekeepers and putting this on. So my name is Ankit Jain. I'm asking for your vote on June 4th for Shadow Senator. I am a voting rights attorney. I'm doing this work because I truly believe in democracy. This position, I'm running for this position as an outgrowth of everything I've been doing in my entire career to advance democratic rights forward. And I don't take democracy for granted. I grew up as the son of immigrants whose dad had to get sleep outside overnight outside his local immigration office to get a green card and get on the pathway to a vote. And my dad worked too hard to gain that right to vote to see his son lose that right just because he decided to cross the river into the city. So I will be dedicated to this cause. I'm 100% committed. I'll show up every day and work hard. And I'm somebody who has the vision and experience to get what we deserve out of Congress, but also brings that new perspective, not stuck in some of the status quo thinking. I'll make sure that we advance statehood forward, and I hope you'll vote for me on June 4th for Shadow Senator. My name is Ankit Ching. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Kinlow.
All right, so first of all, I want to thank all my Ward 8 neighbors and my Ward 8 team and all the statehood activists for being here to see us have this conversation. I've got two personal asks. One is personal, but the larger one is that I need everyone who's involved and can hear my voice to be involved in the statehood movement, because statehood is not about me. It's about all of us. So I need each and every person, if you're part of an organization, urge that organization to do more. Be involved in an organization. If you're not, join one. All right, so be a part of the movement. And then second, I need you to vote for me because I have the experience. I've got the relationships. I have done the work. I'm not new to the game. I'm true to the game. I've been doing this work for 20 years and at a very high level. When people didn't even think about statehood, now it's sexy. Everybody wants to talk about statehood, but we've got a lot of work to do. And I am your guy, Eugene Kinlow. Vote me on June 4th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinlow. Thank each and every one of you for coming on here, taking the time out of your day to speak with us and give information to the Ward 8 Democrats about who you are, your vision for Ward 8, and how you can help us and assist us with moving forward and making DC a state. So once again, we appreciate you and we applaud you on today. We thank you for being here. And so at this time, I just want to say thank you to everyone who were on here. And we do appreciate each and every one of you for logging on. We hope that you gained something from it, got insight, and we hope that you listened to hear something that was impacting. And it made your decision of voting a little bit more easier. When I turn 18, we're definitely doing it. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. We're going to turn it back over to Troy, and I want to tell him thank you for having me. And next time you see me, I might be the president of, Ward 8 Democrats. So have a good day. Thank you.
Man, from your lips to God's ears, I hope you want to become president of the Ward 8 Democrats, because you knocked it out of the park. You knocked it out of the park today for us, Khalid. And I just want everybody to just give him a round of applause, clap it up for him, snap it up for him. And, he's so humble, but I am not. And so I want to share with everybody his Cash App. If you really, really want to thank him, and I had to pry this out of him, by the way. But if you really want to thank him, because he just wanted to go along for the ride, and sure, the ride is important, but you need gas for the ride. So here is his Cash App, everybody. Please, if you are live with us right now, or if you watch this on demand, you have an opportunity to sow a seed into this young man, to thank him for moderating this panel today, panels really, but then also to support our young people. We talked a lot today about youth violence and how can we do more to prevent youth violence and to get them on the right track. Well, we have young people, most of our young people, and hear me when I say this, most of our young people are doing the right thing. And so we have to support them when they are. And so here's one way that we can do that with Khalid today. So